I'm excited to be sitting here in London with Phil from Honest Burger. We had Tom some years ago. I think it was just in the middle of the pandemic. Talk with him about Honest Burger, and then for some reason I asked Tom a couple of times, could you put me in contact with Phil? I would love to, hear about what he's up to now, because things have changed. It's not like it was in the past. You're still involved in Honest Burger, but you're doing many other things. But the vision really for this conversation is talking a bit about, your journey, but also how your view is on how we create, great hospitality businesses by actually putting people first and using them as a competitive advantage instead of like last. As unfortunately sometimes is the P&L comes first, and then there starts to be all kind of challenges. And we will probably also dive in and out of different things. There's also a couple of questions this time from the audience, as I said to you, and some really interesting questions we will explore as well. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Phil, I think the best place to start is just because a lot of people ask me, as we're preparing for this interview, I always ask people around me, people as on the newsletter, what would they like to ask a future guest? And you were one of the future guests. And they said, is Phil part of Honest Burger, or is he doing a pizza thing? And I said, I think he's a bit everywhere. I said, but we'll get clarification on it in the interview. So talk a bit about, the story in Honest Burger quickly, but then also like what are we transitioning into now and what's happening?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm still obviously I'll always be the co-founder of Honest in one sense. I'm on the board. I guess strictly speaking, my job title is I'm a non-exec, just like Dorian, one of the other co-founders. Tom is obviously still full-time in the business with an executive role, so I don't have a day-to-day role in the business anymore, and haven't done for a while, to be fair. I was the ops director and kind of people director, I guess, really, although not a qualified people director, until about 30 restaurants, I think, maybe 27. I forget exactly how many. And then we all kind of took a conscious step back and brought in the grown-ups. And that's kind of pre-COVID. And kind of stayed on in a full-time co-founder kind of role. And then more recently, in the last 2 years, I've stepped back into pretty much most of my time is spent with Honest on the board or out and about in the restaurants meeting people.
Yeah. Great. So, and what has then happened since? Because you are involved in a number of different things, and I had one. We can maybe start with that. I actually would really like to talk about why you went back to school, because I remember I saw a LinkedIn post that it was around behavioral science. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was a couple of reasons really. I mean, I studied philosophy at uni, so I've always liked. I'm quite a conceptual kind of person. I like ideas. I like asking why. So I loved philosophy. It was brilliant. And I'm really interested in, and have been through my career, the space I kind of took within Honest has always been like, how do you motivate people? Whether I was actually asking myself those questions at the start, I mean, I wasn't. I was just interested in trying to get through a queue in Brixton Market. But, always somewhere in the back of my mind has been like, what's the real kind of secret sauce here to get people really engaged in something and ultimately get them to do what you want them to do? And that's kind of what leadership's all about.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound great, but like, so, and I come out of Honest for some really good reasons and for some sort of quite emotionally challenging reasons, to be quite honest. And it's it's a tough transition when you've given yourself 12 years to something and you feel really, it's your baby, right?
Yeah.
Very emotionally attached to it. So felt like I missed a bit of academia. I felt as a founder, as much as I love being a founder, it didn't feel like it was challenging my brain. And I'm reading that with all due respect to anyone I interacted with as a founder. But the reality is, I realized quite quickly that all I had to do to be a really great founder and add value to the business as a founder was go to the restaurants a lot, make sure people know my name, make sure I know their names, say hello, make sure people feel like it's an okay place to be, So as rewarding and as I think impactful as that is, it probably wasn't challenging my brain. So I started feeling like I wanted to sort of work those muscles again a little bit. And I'm just super, super interested in behavioral science and what really motivates human behavior. A good friend of mine down in Brighton, actually, Jerome, has got a fantastic little business called Cogload.
Yeah.
He's distilled behavioral science into these nuggets. It's a great product. He's a good friend. And so he was in my ear a little bit and I was like, this behavioral science thing's pretty cool. And did a little bit of research and found out that the London School of Economics have a world-leading, I think, master's program, an executive master's program. So I signed up for that, and I kind of wanted to bookend as well. I knew if I came out, coming out of Honest and sort of thinking, right, what next?
Yeah.
I know myself, and I would just throw myself headlong into stuff, which I kind of have done since. But I really knew that I needed a bit of time just to like bookend a little bit. So I thought, that course was about an 18-month process. The exec part is because you have to just do 2 weeks at a time. You don't have to be full time. So you take 2 weeks, you do 2 modules, and then 3 months, and then another 2 weeks. Yeah. So I thought to myself, well, that's good. That takes me around to like December 23. And I'd sort of challenge myself not to start a new business until I finished that course. So yeah, that was the motivation, but I loved it.
Is it that thing also that, as a founder, often you also, at some point in the business pulls you in almost what needs to be done. And here you could actually go deep in something and continue going deeper and deeper and deeper, because I guess that's what studying is about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in an area where I have some really challenging opinions, right? And I challenged Honest with those opinions, rightly or wrongly at times, around, autonomy and human motivation, and have had strong opinions and kind of thought, I probably need to be able to back these up academically, really. So that was a big motivation. I think, it touches everything, behavioral science. We're talking about human behavior. Yeah. And it just kind of made sense to me that in what I've been trying to do within Honest, that space I was trying to take, it felt like it was a really good synergy between studying and going a bit deeper, as you say.
And you said something interesting as well, is also having something to activate yourself with as you were doing the transition, because as you said, it must be, and we can dive into that as well, the transition of leaving something you spend more than a decade of your life on. Fostering.
Yeah, definitely. I think, not to be underestimated, I'm a bit blasé. I'm not a particularly emotional person, I have to say. Like, it takes a lot to get me off an even keel most of the time. But yeah, it was tough. I think probably in retrospect, I'd found it harder than I thought, just the initial transition away from an executive role sort of pre-COVID. And with someone like me, and if I can say, we try not to talk about each other for each other, but we're pretty comfortable. Me and Tom, obviously, we know each other very well. But I think we both have some strong opinions, which I'm sure you've seen, right? In slightly different areas and slightly different ways, but very opinionated and very passionate people. And I found myself, you can become a bit of a caricature of yourself as a founder if you're not careful. Like, I keep saying it, the founder, it's like this role, and it's not. It's And I remember being in meetings or board meetings or exec sessions where, I'd find myself arguing about stuff because I felt like that was the role that I was meant to play. And sometimes they were really valid arguments, and I still believe that founders are there to challenge and be really belligerent at times and a bit irrational. And, when we've had it best at Honest, the exec guys have managed to kind of cope with that, and we found a way of having those awkward conversations. Not always, by the way. And, I'm sure it's been a tough place to work for some of them. But I found myself becoming a caricature at times, where I'd argue a point and I'd walk out the room and go, I don't actually feel that strongly about the thing I was just going loopy about. And I didn't like that about myself. Sometimes it was bringing out the best in me, but sometimes it was bringing out the worst in me as well, I felt. And I probably needed a bit of time to really reflect on that, to see that I didn't see that at the time. When I'm really passionate about something, I can be very persuasive, and it's a lot of people would say that's me at my best. I can be quite good at inspiring people towards a vision or a way of going, but there is a flip side to that, and I definitely, with retrospect, felt like I was falling into that trap a little bit. That I was playing this role that I meant to be disruptive on that point, even if I didn't actually have a strong opinion about it, and I didn't like that version of myself, and I found it harder and harder to play, and people found it harder and harder to be around me, I would say. So yeah, I felt like I just needed to step back a little bit. I think a lot of founders are like, you trust your gut, and I was very much a trust your gut kind of guy. I still am to a degree. I think gut feeling is really, really important, particularly if you want to start something. Yeah. But actually I think the LSE course has really given me a kind of test your gut, like use your gut, but then test it. I'm really into data now. Like
it's like critical thinking. Is that what you're thinking?
Absolutely, yeah. Just this idea that you can have some strong opinions on stuff, but actually there's some research and there's some really clever people that have probably already thought of it, and they'll have done a lot of work, and you can really stress test some of those things and then apply it to, how you want to go forward. You're still going to make a decision. You're still going to be a bit irrational at times.
Yeah.
But I much prefer the phrase sort of testing your gut as opposed to just trusting it now.
Yeah, that's super interesting, because as an industry, I have always said we're very driven on gut in many decisions, whereas actually it would be healthy to step back and become a critical thinker. And I think I learned it by accident by being part, as you know, I work for McDonald's. Yep. So everything is based on data. If you can't back it up, then it's going to be hard to get a decision.
Yeah.
What was it that you learned on the course? Because behavioral science is so critical to build a business today, because like we're talking about margins, especially in hospitality, and actually understanding both from a customer point of view, employee point of view, and also, think about your supply chain and everything. It's all about behaviors in the end. But what was like your key learnings you wished you have known this as you were building Honest Burger in retrospect you learned from that specific course?
Yeah, environment shapes behavior. And that helps explain, if I can be, I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, but I think Honest was successful, is successful, and certainly the way we started, we won a lot of awards and we got a lot of recognition. And when I think about trying to understand why I thought we were quite successful, it's because we, not by luck more than design. Yeah. I think we really crafted an environment that helps shape behavior, and I have some really, I'm really opinionated on how that environment can change as a business grows into a chain, and how it can change the behavior without really meaning to. The values don't have to change, or very rarely change within a business, but actually the environment often does, without the leaders or the people who are curating that environment really understanding that they are changing it. And I think what behavioral science has shown me is that the smallest thing can affect someone's decision making, not on big, serious, like life-changing stuff. Yeah. But those decisions in the moment where I'm a member of staff, something's happened on shift or with the team, should I go left or right? What would Honest want me to do, go left or right? And the decision making there can come down to the most simplistic things. There's an amazing study. This guy was trying to I should be able to quote him and I can't, apologies, but perhaps I have to do that in the follow-up. Yeah. Make sure the credit goes where it's deserved. But there's a chap that did a study around market research, essentially trying to debunk market research. This idea that we send these big questions, list of survey questions, and he very simply, put two groups in two different rooms and had them try a French and a German wine, both the same wines in each room. I think you probably know what's coming. And, here's the list, here's the market research, which one would you buy? Which, this is the terroir, this is the label, this is the grape, this is the notes, all the information you need. Now, which one would you buy? And most of the people in this room bought the French wine, and most of the people in this room bought the German wine. And because all he did in this room was play French music, and all he did in that room was play German music. So, these little things. And again, how replicable is that in the real world? But as a snapshot, a kind of soundbite around behavioral science and how, we're all just walking along, affected by stuff that we're so unaware of all the time. And if that isn't an expression of culture within any team, but certainly within hospitality, then I don't know what is. It's groupthink. We tend to. I think it's Ed Kasheen said that we are. We're basically social learners. We look around the room and we decide how to fit in here. And it takes a lot of strength of character to be the one person that doesn't conform to what everyone else is doing. Yeah. See, the Millennium Bridge is a really good one as well. I don't know if you heard about that. When they built the Millennium Bridge, it was meant to sort of sway. Yeah. It was built to kind of take vibration and sway. Yeah. And they had to tone it down, I think, or even completely tie it down. Because it was too much? Or? Yeah, because everyone walks at the same pace. So once you get on the bridge, you end up walking in the same step and the same rhythm as the person in front of you. And because of that, over the course of the day, it really started to go. So they had real issues. And I just like that as a soundbite to, without realizing it, we're all really in tune with each other. We're looking around and there's stuff that's affecting us all the time. So the challenge, of course, then for anyone who's interested in culture and shaping environment with any team, but within a restaurant, let's say, is what are the touch points that are shaping the environment? Yeah. And I don't think they're the things that people think they are. That's what I think I've learned. Yeah.
And we'll come back to that because that's really interesting. How do you actually, create that environment, and how do you think you can be in control? And sometimes, as you say, it's pure luck, especially in the early days. And then you find out it was the energy of that team, or it was something totally random that actually we paid on time was one of the biggest things.
Of course.
Yeah,
spot on.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Well, we'll come back to that because I know you're also working on data now in the industry. The one thing I wanted to talk about, you talked about philosophy before. What is there a specific philosophy that informs the way you think you are? Are you committed to something?
I think probably not. I really like the existential stuff because I just think it's really fun.
Yeah.
I love the idea that a lecturer, a really articulate lecturer can convince you within the space of an hour, seminar or lecture that, the table might not actually be there. Of course it is. But what I like about well, maybe not, that's the point. But it's the fact that it's challenging what you think you know. And what I got from philosophy was probably, if I go up a layer, I like the question why. Like it gave me, I think I've always probably been quite disruptive as a child. Like I don't like the thing that bothers me most is when someone says this is the way it has to be done and will always be like this. Like, wind me up and watch me go. Right?
It triggers you.
Oh my God. If you tell me something can't be done or it has to be done a certain way and that's the best way to, then I'll kill myself trying to find a better way. Yeah. And again, coming back to what I said earlier, that can be the best of me or it can be the worst of me, right? Yeah. But I think probably what I got from philosophy was that, and I don't know how challenging this will be for people listening, but I'm not a spiritual religious person in the slightest. For me, we're these physical beings walking around being affected by stuff all the time. And I just like the idea that I'm actually really insignificant. And philosophy made me realize that there's some big questions out there that we have no answers for. Yeah. Now, I think we're all faced with that in our lives. Like it's an unintelligible world out there, right?
Yeah.
To make sense of all of it is almost impossible. Now you either go, I kind of like the sound of that. Yeah. And kind of bask in the liberation that gives you. Yeah. Like for me, that's like, wow, all bets are off. Whereas for others, I know it's a real challenging mindset, thought process. And that's where, spirituality, religion, lots of other things to find that meaning and those answers. Whereas philosophy gave me this fervent kind of appetite for enjoying the fact that I'll be dead in 50 years and be forgotten. And
the 4,000 weeks.
There's not many people in the history of humankind that are remembered for very long at all, let alone, there's one or two, right? Yeah. And I'm quite happy to be someone that is, that dies and gets forgotten. And I think that gives me the license to have a go when I'm here.
Yeah. I think also it's that who do you want to remember you when you die? And I think that's the question.
I bet you didn't think we'd get into this today, did you? Love it. Let's stay here. Philosophy's great.
Because you trigger something in me because I'm very into, I'm not religious, but I'm into, I love Buddhism and Dalai Lama and the way from a leadership perspective, and then Stoicism in a way, what's in your control, what's not in your control.
Interesting mix.
Yeah. And you really, and when you start approaching organization development, which we're going to be talking about, like having a founder that is into philosophy, thinks also it sets the bar. I don't know if I'm right in that, differently than it would be if you were just in there for business. I'm just here for business.
For sure. And I think if it was just me, that would be a problem. But I think, I can literally hear Tom or picture his face as he's listening to this. So if you're listening, Tom, I can see you getting really annoyed about the "is the table there really there" comment, because it's so not his personality. And I think the mix of the two there is really, really important. So
and then you did your 18 months back at school, and then you're back in action. You have a number of projects. I don't know where we should start. Start with the pizza, because that's a question from one of the super fans of the show.
Yeah.
To you and there.
Yeah, so Breadstall pizza. So very simple. I mean, to say me and Dorian both sort of stepped back at similar times, really. Had a bit, working on other little projects. We do bits of advisory and AD kind of stuff, and again, we can talk about. But he lives not far from this guy who's been doing pizza for the last 5 years. He's had the Breadstall for about 20. He's a baker by trade, a chap called Sebastian Vince. Amazing character, just covered in flour every time you see him, like proper eccentric in all the best ways, and just an absolute, just loves dough. Anyway, he through COVID realized everyone just wanted pizza, and he was making some really good pizza, and flipped it over. But anyway, Dorian just said to me, "Listen, man, I think go and eat this guy's pizza down in Clapham." on Northcote Road. If you think it's the best pizza you've ever had, then I think we should talk to this guy and see what he wants to do with it, if he wants to do anything with us. So I did. I went down there, ate it. It was the best pizza I've ever had. I loved, it triggered all my old school hospitality, street food, kind of on the street market kind of vibes, rough and ready, just how we started Honest,
Yeah.
And I love the simplicity of it. And it felt like a different thing that the city hasn't seen yet. I think the Neapolitan thing has happened or is happening.
Yeah.
Some amazing places out there doing really authentic Neapolitan pizza. Never personally been my favorite style of pizza. I find it a little bit chewy and a little bit floppy. So I tried Seb's and it's crispy. It's got all the best bits of New York and I'd say all the best bits of Neapolitan with a thicker crust kind of smacked together. Serving it by the quarter, so 20-inch pizzas by the quarter or the half. So it's a bit bigger than a slice. It's about this. Everything one price. I mean, I love
Simplicity,
it. The menu is literally a handwritten chalkboard that just says quarter, £7, half, £14, whole, 24. And away you go. That's it. And just simple flavors. I just, first and foremost, I love the food as a customer, and then my operator bones kicked in. It's such a simple operation, simple concept. And I think fast casual kind of restaurants, I think they're successful. I think Honest was successful because it was a simple place to eat and it was a simple place to work.
Yeah.
And I very purposely use the word simple, not easy. It's certainly not easy to work in an Honest. It's certainly not easy to work on the Breadstall. The guys work hard, it's hot, it's fast paced, all those things that we know about restaurants that make it a hard place to work, but it's simple. And I think if you get those two things right with a sort of £10 to £15 price point average spend, then I think you got a good business.
And what is the vision for this?
So we've raised some money. It was a lot easier this time than last time, let's put it that way.
Second time around.
We've gone out and spoken to some friends, family, a few contacts, a few customers of the stall. We've raised nearly over. We're just closing it as we speak. We've raised about $1 million, just over $1 million.
Well done.
The plan is we've taken quite a lot up front, but we just kind of we don't want to mess around with trying to raise money as we go. We think there's a 3 to 4 year project here where we could get to 10. We think the business could have a decent value attached to it at that point, and then we just take a view. See how we feel. For me and myself, I don't want to speak for Dorian, but we've been there, we've done that. The 40 site thing is one thing. I think, do I want to get another? Do I want to be in a business that gets to 40 or even higher again as a founder, as a driver of it? I don't know, but we'll see when we get there. But yeah, I think we've got a site coming up in Soho in November.
Yeah.
So first site will be Berwick Street, looking like mid-November.
So straight into the pulse of hospitality.
Straight in, the site was too good to pass, unfortunately. And it's probably a little bit bigger than we wanted to go for our first one. It's not huge, but it's sort of high rent and right slap in the middle of London. But we know that area really well, and we know it's going to be super successful there, I think. So yeah, it's just amazing pizza. So just go and try it. If you don't think it's great pizza, then, it's as simple as that.
There will be people listening here that will come. So what, when you do this the second time, you're standing here, you're standing at the start line again, not the finish line, the start line again, in principle. Is there anything you then, from your learnings as one of the co-founders in Honest Burger, is taking with you into the new venture? What would you do differently this time?
Yeah, such a good question, and it's been I've been wrestling with it for the last 9 months. We've got a couple of really good guys that have come and joined the project and are going to sort of lead on ops, and got the first couple of GMs already lined in the business on the stall. They're getting really itchy fingers now. It's been a while. They're down there making pizzas every day, bless them, but they're ready to go. And Nathan in particular, who's going to be leading ops with me on it, has what rotor tool are we going to use? I'm like, no, you're not getting one. What are we going to do for an F&B stock system? No, you're not getting one. Unless, rightly or wrongly, by the way, there's probably people listening to this thinking I'm mad, but that, and I'm kind of indirectly answering your question, because there's things that I think we did really well at Honest because we weren't thinking about any of that stuff, I just don't believe that you need it. I said to Nathan, I was like, well, if you want me to check your rotas for you every week, and he's like, no. And I was like, well, shut up then. Like, do you really do you need an algorithm? Do you want a system to write the rota for you? He's like, no. And I was like, well, why do you want the system then? We don't need one yet. Like, we'll get one later.
Yeah.
Like, and the menu, the ingredients is so small. Like, I just think we can get bogged down in admin and too much data and paperwork and systems when I think we all know this. I don't care how big the business is. The most important thing is that all the energy, all the resources, all the budget goes on the food quality and the people. And
talk a bit more about that.
I would say that's a mantra for any startup business, but I don't think it should be any different if you've got 100 restaurants, to be honest.
Nope.
Like, I mean, how often do you go to a place and get rubbish food and or rubbish food or the staff don't look particularly happy? And then you look on the wall and you see like a £20,000 piece of art, or the lighting looks like it's been designed by, I don't know, famous designer. And you just think, I really wish you'd spend more money on the thing I'm eating as opposed to the bit of thing on the wall, And we always had that approach at Honest, that we wouldn't over-engineer anything, that all our attention would go on the quality of the food, and trying to make people really happy to be there, right? The customers, staff. So, yeah, less is more has definitely been my approach. I may live to regret some of this, by the way, but I'm really adamant that you just got to make some mistakes. Like, the best concepts, in my opinion, start with the kind of street food routes that we're starting with, and then allow it to kind of figure out what the right course of action is, like what the right detail is. I managed to convince Seb to put a bar in down on the stall, honestly. I'm not just saying this to get people to go down there, but trust me when I say it's the best place in London for a bit of hospitality. I do a shift there every Thursday, Friday night. One of the two, I try and get down there and just get on the bar. I've missed it so much. Like, I love it. Like, there's so many great things about Honest, and what I've learned by being around those senior people, and the scale of that has been amazing. But there's nothing quite like standing behind a bar with a bunch of people staring at you, 12 seats we've got, all looking at the bar, with a slice of pizza and a frozen margarita, and just chatting shit to people. It's just hospitality as I remember it and know it. And, what should the drinks menu be? There's a question, right? We're like, well, let's just we got a beer tap in, and we do a lager. Okay, well, that's fine. We'll just use that. And then it's like, this guy comes down from Castlebell and was like, do you want a frozen margarita machine if you use our tequila? Like, yeah, all right, why not? Put a frozen margarita machine in, and now I want one in every restaurant we ever open. And that stuff doesn't come out by sitting in a boardroom with a pen.
Comes out by doing it, in principle, and being it.
We just drilled this like old enamel sink to the front of the thingy, and I was just like, let's just put some bottles of Coke in there with ice and see if that works. And literally had to convince Seb to do it. And the first time we did it, I was like, there's something really inviting about like glass bottles of Coke in ice.
Indulging,
So we did it, and literally 12 o'clock, first two lads walk up, get pizza. That looks nice. 2 bottles of Coke. I was like, I mean, I don't know if we're selling loads, to be honest, but the first snapshot, I was like, there we go. So, but just like, it's just great, just trying stuff out. And as long as you get the basics right, like, I know the pizza's amazing. And as long as we protect that process of the dough and how it's made, then I think you got to leave a little bit of playtime for other parts of the concept and for the team as well. And so less is definitely more. I think if I was going to actually properly answer your question, which is what would I do differently? I never ever baked in a really good culture of internal progression and training in Honest early on. I'm not saying we should have done it from day one, but we were always behind on that, and that was my fault. Like, I always felt, I'm someone that's like, just throw me in and let me have a go and I'll figure it out. And back then I assumed that's how everyone learned. And that's just not the case. Right? No. In fact, I'm probably more in the minority. And I think we struggled with that in Honest for a long time. But I would say that our current people director, Nikki, is only just fixing that problem. And we're 14 in, and Maureen Bahora. I think they're only just fixing that problem. So I'll hold my hands up to that one. So I really, really want to bake in this idea that internal progression and development, personal and management development, is really important.
And make it visual.
Well, exactly. Coming back to our point about environment, for me, the P&L now, which I'm kind of obsessed with, believe it or not, not so much because numbers are important. You can't get away from the fact we're a business, we're here to make money. And I don't think that's a dirty word. And I don't think that shouldn't show up in your culture. But the P&L is the ultimate expression of your culture. The ultimate expression, right? Do you have a training line on your P&L The line that actually says, this is the amount of money we are dedicating to training non-operational hours. A lot of P&Ls don't. Do we have a line that says, there's a bunch of money for management development. There's some money for staff parties. And I'm sure everyone has that. You know, like when you look through those lines and you show a GM, if you even show a GM, and there's a debate.
Yeah, let's say something about culture again.
Very opinionated that GM should feel P&L accountable to a degree. They should see these little cultural signals that tell you what we think's important. And if I had a one-liner about culture, now I'm really going off on one, but it would be whatever the staff think you think's important, whatever the team think you think's important, which is a really obvious thing to say, but it begs the question, where do they get there? How do they decide what you think's important? And yes, the values that you wrote in the manual on the first day that they read for 30 seconds and then throw under the bed or never check again on their phone.
Or intranet or whatever.
Usually some really high level like quality, and I'm naming some honest ones now, or take pride, or treat people with kindness and all this kind of stuff. Obviously all really nice stuff. And it's really nice to hear on your first day that the leader of the business cares about this stuff. But do I think it really changes behavior? No, like you figure out what I think's important at Honest or at Breadstall by what happens to you every day. And if I say, I really care about your experience, we're going to be people first. And then I put, I allow 3 doubles in a row, and you don't get your rota until on Monday for the start of that week, then you start going, well, I don't think you do think that. So we touched on it earlier. It's all the little things that tell you what's important, right? And I think, a few lines on that P&L will tell you more about a business or not about business than anything else, right? And a bunch of other things alongside it,
Yeah, because again, now we just stay a bit with the P&L. There's 2 thick questions I wanted to ask you. The first one is, again, you talked about energy, what you put in your people, and you talked about in the P&L context, is there training budget, is there management development, then also the ingredients, I guess, also again, like what level is your food cost on? You're focusing on doing the right thing,
Yeah, you don't cut corners on quality. I mean, that's just, it blows my mind that businesses do that at scale. And I get why death by 1,000 cuts, well documented, lots of people talk about it. Yeah. You do all these little things and you think in and of themselves they're not big, but as part of a whole piece, it becomes catastrophic. And, we have never, ever, Honest, Tom would have.
Tom.
This is his space, right? Like the fence posts are very high. I remember he wanted to sack a financial controller once because she suggested we didn't use mold and sea salt. I'm not sure that's a good story or not, but we didn't, by the way. Don't worry. But I love that level of rationality and quality, and you just do not mess around with the dough in this case, right? Yeah. And one thing we're baking in is actually, because it's not wood-fired ovens, Seb's really sort of rational about it. He's like, I don't care about hot spots in wood-fired ovens or piazzolas. Like, it's an electric oven. It's easy to do. It's not hard to train someone up within a couple of days. To be stretching pizza and cooking pizza in the oven and serving pizza from the table to customers. But what will be hard and is hard and takes a lot of skill is actually making the dough. So if you want to touch the dough, like make the dough, you're going to have to jump some big fence posts. Everything else is going to be pretty straightforward, and we're going to be really engaged in getting people entry level jobs through. But we're going to create a role called dough master, and again, there's a cultural. So that all these little things. It's like there is a role called dough master, and it gets paid more. And if you want to get that, then you're going to have to do like a month.
You have to do the work.
You're going to have to spend time with Seb in Northcote Road. Yeah. There's going to be some high fence posts to jump over to be a dough master. But we love status. There's behavioral science for you, right? We love the idea that something's difficult and we can attain it. We love mastery. Yeah. We're really driven by mastery as human beings, even if it's something that we don't want to do. The kid that wants to be a lawyer that's working in Breadstall now while he's at uni, give him the chance to be a dough master and he'll take it, because it's this idea of craftsmanship and mastery. And yeah, it's going to be incredibly difficult for someone to touch the dough, but everything up to that point is going to be pretty straightforward, and we're going to make it super, super easy.
It's very interesting. I'm going to jump now. We're going to come back to the P&L in a second. Sure. But I think you said the word mastery, and I think I've interviewed a lot of people here on the podcast, and I call it what Maverick thinks and do, and mastery is one of them. They get obsessive of certain parts of the business. So we had Andreas Carlson, to give another example, on the podcast very early on. And we did something together a couple of months ago in April, where Kim Rabeck, the founder, was there, and he started talking about the way they, in the kitchen, focusing on there's one thing you need to train in very well. It's knife skills. It's like cutting that sushi. I can't remember if it's 15 grams or 12 grams, and you're trained in that. That's like obsessive about that. If you can't do that, you're not making sushi.
I totally agree, and I love it. I think people, I probably underestimated this, by the way. I certainly did, and I love it now. There's something called self-determination theory, which you learn a lot in behavioral science, and it's the mixture of autonomy, competency, mastery, and relatedness by two guys, Ryan and Decky, in the early 2000s. Done a big study on this, and it's been iterated on loads, which obviously gives it kind of veracity, I think. So, but yeah, mastery is a big one. Dan Pink actually overlaid on top of competency. He said mastery was the thing, and I love that. You know, that there is this thing that you can get really good at in the space and time that you are taking right now, and whatever job it is for that part of the day. I remember learning how to fillet a fish at Riddle and Finn's, and it would be I'd do that to my mum and dad, and when we had friends over and we had fish, I'd be filleting fish for people, and I was really proud of the fact that I could fillet a Dover sole. At the time I wasn't planning to be in restaurants. I wanted to be a journalist, right? So, but I think we all get a kick out of learning how to do something really well.
But I think also it's a very human. That's where the business becomes very human in a way, even though there's this extreme discipline about a specific craft, the dough, the sushi, the burgers, whatever it is. Like there is that innate focus where you can become very human as well, because you could become very good at something only a human can become.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, love that. Yeah, you're right. And I think I can see where you're going, by the way. In an age of AI and robots or whatever you want to talk about, there's definitely something there that masks us out, right? The Japanese do this incredibly well, right?
Sticks and sushi, we talked about them, Then you talked about the P&L and, the relevance of you need to make a business. Then you talk about the, autonomy you talked about very early on as well. And I'm a huge believer, and Accolade Mavericks also believes that autonomy is key. Daniel Pink, I think you just mentioned from Drive, talks about autonomy, I think in that piece of work, Drive as well. So how is that gonna play a different role in the new business? Are there gonna be more autonomy after you've done your studies as well? And
but I think it's about, I flirted with, autonomy isn't anarchy, and I'll probably try some stuff in Honest that I probably have tripped us into a bit of anarchy at times. I'm really quite liberal at heart, and I think you don't hire, as Steve Jobs says, you don't hire good people and tell them what to do, right? And,
no.
There is this thing that we all know, and I don't care who's listening, and no, I don't think anyone can disagree with me, that we know that within a portfolio of restaurants, when a manager in one of them just outwardly displays the behavior of these four walls are mine just a little bit, it just takes a little bit of ownership. We know that performance comes next. We know that it does. It's undeniable correlation for me that when a manager actually says, I really care about these four walls, even though I don't own Honest Burgers, Phil, Tom and Dorian and Active Partners own Honest Burgers, right? When you get a manager that says, this is mine, this is my team, performance follows. So then you have to ask yourself, well, do we create an environment for ownership in restaurants? And at scale, we just do not. We just don't. And that's where, people understand the power of autonomy. It's a key human need. We all love having a little bit of freedom. We don't want chaos and anarchy where I can make all their own decisions and there's no consequences. That's anarchy. You want to know that you've got some freedom to express yourself, but that when you look over your shoulder, you're not 100 yards ahead of everyone else. That, you haven't gone completely into the wrong field. So there needs to be freedom within a framework or whatever you want to call it. There needs to be some non-negotiables, but they need to be small. If you're a business leader that believes in autonomy and then you write the list of non-negotiables, it's like, Honest has to be green and you can't put pizza on the menu, you have to do these things, and every week you have to send this report. If by the end of that process of like, well, I'll get the non-negotiables done first and then we'll do autonomy. If you get to like 100 things, you're just not someone that believes in it. So don't try. Just embrace the fact that you're a micromanager, and there's some really successful restaurant businesses at scale that work that way. Right? Used to work at one. So, and there's no disrespect in that, but if you believe in autonomy, and I certainly think it's a funner place to work, if you feel like you've got a bit of creative freedom, particularly at scale, then you have to allow people the space to have a go and make some mistakes. And therein lies a big problem.
Is that also critical, you think, for creating that hospitality experience you talked about
100%.
earlier? There's now at that one stall. How do you scale that experience? You can't make it one for one, but how do you the soul of that?
Yeah, again, good hospitality starts with great food, and then I'm a front house guy by definition, I would say. And you can't. Hospitality is looking at a customer and going, "This is what you need from me." Everything else is service, and how many experiences out there are now, it's not hospitality, but I told you off camera, I was looking at a school for my son this morning.
Yeah.
And they wheel out the kids that are already there. Yeah. Of course, they only put the really smart, articulate kids in front of you. And I asked this kid, what's the best thing about the school? And it was like it was such a sweet kid. He was like 10 years old or whatever. Obviously a little bit nervous, but he just tried out the most beautiful script that he'd obviously been told to say. And I was like, what a waste of time. Like, thanks. Obviously I was really courteous to him. I tried to be, but I thought, what a waste of time, So, hospitality is looking at a customer and going, what does this person need from me right this very second? And sometimes that's absolutely nothing, like leave me the hell alone.
Yeah.
If you have my brother on here and asked him, he when he goes for dinner, he's there to be with the person he's with. He doesn't want a chatty waiter, like leave him the fuck alone.
Yeah.
Like, he's a grumpy bastard, my brother. He's not really.
If you're listening,
sorry, Alex, but hospitality is saying to a human being, try and connect with another human being, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when you do it, God, the experience they get. And it's become, I mean, here's a statement for you, but how long, I'm not even sure we can call it hospitality for much longer. Like if we keep going down this road of like tappy screens and QR codes and delivery riders, is that hospitality? Not as I understand the definition. No, it's something else. Successful, important, there to be had. But it's more retail, I think, isn't it? It's like hospitality is trying to connect with a human being and make an experience that is predicated by amazing food, just a little bit more memorable, a little bit more personal when you can, and knowing when to toggle that on and off. Now, service steps and scripts can't get you there.
No. Do you think we're losing it? That's what you're saying? Like we are already, because I've had a couple of conversations, and somebody says retail, as you said, and others says like we're becoming a production company more. We are undoubtedly losing it. And it's all, people will say, oh, it's because this generation and can't, whatever it is, this much maligned generation. Now, I'm going to be really careful to talk about Gen Z because I don't know any, my kids are young, my brother's kids are young. I don't know any Gen Z enough to really, say that I understand them and how they feel about the workplace. But it's a lazy thing to do. And plus, there's nothing you can do about it. They are what they are, right? Well, for whatever they are. So I think we have to think about the environment we create for these guys. I think it's on us. So, the often reason is, we can't do hospitality anymore because of that bullshit. Like, I'm just not having it. We're definitely losing it. I mean, I can't be the only one that thinks we're just not getting those hospitality experiences anymore as much as we used to. There's some incredible businesses out there doing hospitality incredibly well, of course. And in pockets, you'll see it. You could go to the most chain place in the world and get incredible hospitality, and that's down to the human. Yeah, and the manager's right, and they've created an environment, and it's the simplest thing, and I love it. I think I'm going to shoot to a question you asked me then. Where can people find me? Well, come and find me at the Breadstall on a Friday night and sit at the bar. Yeah, and you'll see hospitality in action because the guys down there, we're fast, it's good value, it's all the things that kind of QSR, because it's that kind of environment is, but it's got a bit of personality. People sit there, they listen to the music, they get the pizza. Little bit of chat, and you just see them go, oh my God, like they haven't had anything like it for a while. I don't think it's rare. Is it like become over-engineered by design? We almost want to design experiences, and then it becomes a bit more. Then we need the technology, then we need the scheduling system, and we actually forget the basic premises of hospitality is great food and great human interactions. Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think some of these systems, the algorithms telling managers how to do their job. Yeah. Okay, is a computer better at writing a rota than a human? Maybe, but that's not the point. We want ownership, if you believe in ownership. And that means I write my rota, not a computer. Do you know what I mean? And I'm flawed like any other human. And it's like, I think there's so much more benefit to the risk of a human doing it than of a system or an algorithm doing it. I'm actually doing my thesis for the master still. I haven't finished the master's, by the way. I should say that I'm not a qualified master in behavioural science yet.
on something called the lowest common denominator effect.
Yeah.
Which I'm really interested in, highly prevalent in education.
Yeah.
The idea of, dumbing down something for the lowest performer in the room is really prevalent in education. Not saying that's inappropriate, by the way, in education.
No.
But also marketing for mass appeal, that kind of stuff. So there's some studies done in that, but no one's ever done a study on the impacts within organizational culture. Yeah. And it's something I see a lot. I feel like I've experienced a lot in chain businesses where we say we want hospitality, we say we want individual experiences, and yet I think the systems and the plumbing and the structures built around people at scale actually don't promote that. I call it's the 3 out of 5 mentality, and I think if you want a 5 out of 5 review, or there's a scale of 1 to 5 on TripAdvisor.
Yeah.
The 3 out of 5 line is the service line. Yeah. Where I'll give you a script, say the same thing every time, and we'll make sure that we won't get any ones.
So we keep the bottom line.
Control, you can feel head office with their white knuckles gripping onto 50 restaurants going, we know that all our staff are saying the same thing and they're being told to say hello to people at the door. So we're very rarely going to get a 1 out of 5. And actually, if you look on TripAdvisor and look at chain restaurants, very rarely do they get reviews, because why would you review a chain restaurant if it's 3 out of 5? And when you see a 3 out of 5 review, it's very rarely more than 6 words. Yeah. It's very informational. It's the 5s and the 1s where the great language comes out, right? And I just think at scale, you can felt this, and I get it. You can become terrified of a 1 out of 5 review. You can't have a 1 out of 5 review. It can't be. We can't have that. So what you do is you bring the system in that makes sure you stop the 1s. My argument is, I think you bring the 5 out of 5 people down. I had this example with an Honest. We used to have a trial shift sheet. Here's what a trialist has to be told or do, whatever it is. I can't remember what it was. It was like a horrible printed thing on a clipboard somewhere. It was the trial shift, make sure the trialist knows that they have to greet people at the door. And I thought, well, why are we writing that? And it's, well, what if they don't? We'll get a bad review. And I was like, well, we need to find out if they're going to do it naturally, don't we?
Yeah, because that's the trial is about that.
And I thought to myself, well, if I'm that person, I'm good at hospitality. I'm happy to say on camera, and feel free to come and check me out and tell me I'm wrong. So I know if you trialed me in your restaurant, I would have done that naturally. But because you told me to do it, when I do it, you think I only did it because you told me to do it. Now, if I'm rubbish at my job and I wasn't going to do it, I also do it because you told me to do it. Yeah. So, is there anything worse you can do to a human being, a 5 out of 5 human being, and then make them look like a 1 out of 5 human being? I think that's probably the worst thing you can do to someone. So you have to allow a little bit of freedom, which means you have to accept a few 1 out of 5s at the time. And I say this very passionately within Honest. I will be saying it within Breadstall. I prefer a 1 out of 5 review than a 3 out of 5 review. I'd rather someone hate us than just think we're okay. Yeah. I'd rather someone came to Honest and when it was rubbish, than they go, oh, I think I went to Honest last week. Actually, was it a Byron? Was it a GBK? It might have been a Five Guys. No, I think I did go to Honest. I would rather you said, I went to Honest, it was shit. Genuinely.
But then also, you can
feel something. I can get hold of you and say, well, why did you think it was shit? Let's get you back. We obviously messed up. You can fix a 1 out of 5 most of the time. 3 out of 5, they've gone. You never get them back.
It's interesting because you never actually dive into your middle grade. You always look at the top performers, what went well, and then let's look at what didn't go
Look
that
at
well.
the systems, though. I would say if anyone is even remotely liking what I'm saying here, I would say look at the systems and the processes you've put in place, which are creating the environment you've got, and therefore the culture you've got. It's not the values. It'll be all this stuff. And if they're geared towards making sure the people that you think are rubbish won't be rubbish anymore, then you're probably falling foul of the lowest common denominator effect, I would say. And you're probably not getting the best out of the best people.
And if we're thinking about now you're creating your next venture, and we also talked about that, you think hospitality is disappearing out of hospitality, if we can say it like that. Yeah. And it seems like also you believe that the environment has created predict performance and the quality of that performance and hospitality experience, because what we are in the game for is hospitality experience. What is it what are the steps then leaders should do to unwind that in your view? Do you have some ideas? It might not be the algorithm, because everybody needs to find their own algorithm and alchemy in every organization.
Yeah, I mean, I stop short of sort of answering that question directly, if that's okay, because I'm not here to give anyone. I don't want to give anyone advice. I'm not going to tell people what I think should do, I'll tell you my opinion, which is, control your delivery to a certain percentage. Don't take the lot completely off. Don't put QR codes on your tables for ordering. Pay, I can just about get my head around. I think paying in certain locations at certain times is a pain point for both staff and customers, and actually a pay app I think could be quite useful, could be quite helpful in certain situations, not everything. There seems to be a bit of at the moment, and I get, it's been a tough old market out there, isn't it, for restaurants, but there seems to be a bit of a drive to try and increase average spend as much as possible with your right hand. Get people to spend more, attach
to growing the business.
These tappy screens where you try and order some, chicken teriyaki with rice and you get upsold miso soup about 10 times in the experience. Are you sure you don't want miso soup? No, what about a drink? What about that miso soup? It's like, man, I just want to pay, So, I think, there is with this right hand, we're like, how can we get customers to spend more? But there also this huge trend now for like loyalty, which for me is discounting, which isn't loyalty in my opinion, but where like, we'll get you to spend more and then we'll discount the shit out of it over here, which seems really I just can't quite get my head around that strategy. Whereas I think the thing that makes sense is good quality and good service will always win the day, surely. So
the quality of the service then is determined by the quality of the environment you give the staff, I guess you're thinking.
I think so, yeah. I think, it just depends what you say is outwardly important. Like if if you're going to put a QR code on the table, then you're going to, you're removing the hospitality, I would say, from it. You've got people that are carrying plates and taking payments. Yeah. That's fine. But then you're not going after hospitality. And man, there's going to be some very successful businesses that have embraced that, by the way. So, it just depends on how you class success, right?
Yeah, and also, again, what does the customer expect? I guess as well, like, what, do you actually want the interaction when you go and buy that specific product?
Yeah, and again, this is where, it's very subjective, and, you're asking for my opinion, and I'm happy to give it. But, I think, again, I might find myself in the minority that there's some customers out there that love the tappy screens and love not having to talk to a human being, right? And there's definitely some experiences that lend itself to that, the kind of quick grab and go lunchy kind of places is probably exactly what you want, right? Myself included to a degree. But that's not the sort of business I'm going to start or be involved in.
So what do you think is that we need as leaders to unlearn is in this transition in hospitality, where pandemic forced us into a more tech environment, more focusing on, there has been a necessity for some people to focus on cost, and you said it's been tough times, but like, what, it's like a thing you would think, if we could just unlearn that, we'll just become that better as an industry.
Unlearn. The delivery, I think delivery is an interesting one. A lot of there's a high percentage of sales going through lots of restaurants now that have quite a high commission attached to it. And, I was speaking to an operator the other day, who remain nameless, but, they really have got your balls in a vice. They can control that algorithm if they want to. I think you have to have a really good relationship with your delivery partner. And obviously, I don't want to sound hypocritical, because obviously delivery was a huge part of our business through COVID, and we've been nowhere without it. So, and there's some really good elements of it, but I think that's one that maybe we have to kind of keep our reins on a little bit, I would say. I think it's reminding ourselves that there's some really good human beings out there, that people don't come to work to do a rubbish job. Very few people wake up in the morning and think, how can I screw everyone as burgers today? And I think if you start with that mindset, then I think good things will follow. If you start with the mindset that everyone's rubbish and is out to steal from the till, then you'll end up with a system and environment that feels very non-collaborative.
I guess also you talk about lack of, almost like there's not enough staff, there's not enough of that. There might be true challenges, but as you talk about that, you make that your own reality as well, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I believe that. I think there's some really great businesses doing really great stuff with their people that don't have any trouble finding people to hire and develop people through the system. So, it can be done. Yeah, it can be done.
In your future business, Breadstall, what is like the pillars of how you want to build that culture that creates, unique hospitality experiences?
A couple of touch points. I mean, that, I'm gonna every manage. Well, I'd like to. I'm still scoping this out. But certainly all management will have a personal development budget attached to their contract. And that's not management development. There'll be a management development budget on the P&L, but each person will have some money where they can come to me and say, this is what I want to go on this course. I want to put that money towards this course or this volunteer program, or I don't really care. You know, I think the wording I've written is it'd be kind of cool if what you choose makes you a better leader, but I'm not really fussed. I think that's what I've written in the contract. Again, a little bit of autonomy. Just really want to bake that in from day one. So it's going to be some real obvious signals that your development, your progression is really important to us. Maintenance, when we get there, you know, talk about cultural messaging. You know, we can talk a good game, and I've definitely fallen foul of this and honest in my ops director days, where we're talking a good game, we really care about you, but the glass machine takes a week to get fixed. You know, you very quickly forget the values or the Christmas party you had when the next 2 weeks you're hand washing glasses. Yeah. And you think the company could have got that fixed quicker or just bought you a new one or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, so we're going to bake in a really good maintenance culture. When the times come to it, we won't need a big system for when we have one restaurant, but when we get to a few more, hopefully I want to be really quick on how we react on stuff that makes their lives hard in the restaurant.
So that they have the resources to get the job done well, in principle.
Yeah. And you know, I think, you know, how you react to that stuff is tells you what they think. It helps them figure out what you think's important, right? And bonusing as well. There's quite a lot of behavioral science research that supports the idea that, you know, loss aversion is a thing, right? The losing a tenner is worse than getting 20 quid, right? Yeah. To people, twice, you know, losses weigh twice as hard as gains. Yeah. And I've always found with bonus schemes, and I've done a few, and I've given out bonus payments, and it's always meant to feel like a really positive conversation when you're handing that manager the check, or you're saying you've got £1,000 this quarter or whatever it is, right? And yet they could have got 2,000, right? Because we gave them a load of KPIs, and of course they're never going to hit all of them.
Can't hit all of them, no.
So what started as, and there's always been this tinge, and now I feel like I can articulate it better thanks to the course, but where they're like, this isn't, you don't look happy. I've just given you £1,000 and yet somehow you're not happy about it. And it's because they think I've taken £1,000 from them and that's weighing on them more. Yeah. And the problem with bonusing on KPIs, throughput KPIs as I would call them, like centered to customer sentiment or staff retention or wastage or stock variance, whatever it is, all these throughput KPIs as I would call them. They're not the things you actually do. They're the signs that something's going well, outcome, right? But the problem with bonusing them is that you can't control them all the time. Yep. And sometimes people do just leave because they go back to uni or because they just went right. And then you find yourself losing your bonus over it. And it's like this loss aversion kicks in and there's this angst. And what should be a very positive thing, which is I'm giving you more money than your basic salary. Has often always felt, and maybe I've just been doing it wrong the whole time, but like it's always felt not positive. So we will have bonus schemes in Breadstall, and I work with a couple of businesses now, and I'm sort of instigating this and a few others where the number starts at 0 and can only go up. You know, I'm really into profit share. Profit's not a dirty word. And actually, if you can have a really meaningful profit share scheme so that when that 55-hour week comes along or that really tough shift or that really rude customer, or you break a record and you're like knackered at the end of shift, you feel like 10p of that pound has gone in your pocket or whatever it is, right? I think profit share is really powerful, and I will not bonus people on KPIs anymore. So it's profit on the performance of the month, or or so it's probably quarterly. I think quarterly or annually. I think quarterly is probably right because then you can get into a reforecast situation without changing the goalposts for someone at the end of the year. Yeah. So I like profit share. I'm really interested in the ultimate health check I think on the industry always has been and certainly is now is like for like volume growth. Yeah. So covers growth, not sales growth. We just put a bonus scheme into Riddle and Finns, who I do a bit of work with again now as a sort of scale up kind of advisor, where 13 weeks and a quarter, every week that achieves like for like covers growth, 100 quid. So there's £1,300 up for grabs at the end of the quarter, but it starts at 0 and it can only go up. Yeah. So at the start of the quarter, you've got nothing and it can only go up. Yeah. And I just like that little sort of behavioral shift, I think. Yeah. I mean, ask me again in a year's time if it works or not. I might still be having really underwhelming bonus conversations, but just trying to change the mindset around bonusing is something else I'm really, really interested in. And there'll be a couple of non-negotiables. There's like 8 things that our managers will have to do. And after that, you do you, get on with it.
The autonomy, back to the...
Yeah, I'm here to support,
Yeah. Because a stake in the outcome is important, not just emotionally in the autonomy, but also financially, in a way, I guess, for people that works in the industry, where it's could make it a bit more sticky in a way, because I can actually influence my salary in a positive way, and it's not out of my control as a labor budget or food cost or whatever we are talking about, customer sentiment, blah blah blah.
Yeah, and I think if you've got the right people, and again, the right people are shaped by the right environment, not the other way around, right? Mostly. I think if you've got the right people, you can ask someone to, like, I want them to be involved in the quarterly reforecasting. I want our managers to do it, really. And the fear then is, they'll just lowball it so it's easy to hit their bonus. And I'm like, well, I'll take that 1 out of 5, because for every one person like that if someone does that, then I'm going to say that's on me. Like, why do they think that's the acceptable thing to do? Like, that's not the culture we're going to create here. Like, we want to achieve, we want to be ambitious. So I like the idea that we can involve people in those reforecasts, and they can have some autonomy over their labour budget. And I just, you will get the best out of people if you just trust them, I think.
And how do you, as a leader, keep that trust level? Because what I often have seen at scale, the number of restaurants you put on, it becomes harder for the organization to have 100% trust in every GM.
It's funny, yeah.
And you fight your corner for that. Say, no, we can't build that system because it will actually show them that we don't trust them.
Yeah. It's just really hard, by the way. And this probably, this is a big core belief of mine, or certainly was one I've been trying to stress test with this course and with the last couple of years. And if anything, I believe in harder is that the more layers you add to the structure, the more process you bring in, the more permissions, sign-off processes you bring in. Just with every one of those, you're just telling the managers to stop taking ownership just a little bit, because we'll do it for you over here. And I just think that there's more cons to that than there are pros. But it all comes down to trust. I drew this little graph once, which I can't obviously do it with my arms. If you've got kind of how much trust you're prepared to give someone on this side of the axis, and you've got how much accountability you see taken from a manager on this side, I don't think there's a perfect equilibrium of a straight line to this top right-hand box here, which is like the autonomy space, right?
Yeah.
High on trust, high on accountability, top right. That's where we want people.
Yeah.
Don't think there's a direct line through it, because the bottom left of that, low trust, low accountability, that's a dictatorship. That's autocracy, right?
Yeah.
We don't care if you have any accountability, and we don't need to trust you, because do this. There's the systems, do this every day. That's how our business works. If you go too far up the left-hand side, loads of trust, but you don't see a load of accountability come back at you or reflected, then that's anarchy. And I think if you're bottom right, so low, we don't really trust you at all. We don't care about trust. But, and this is probably the worst box to be in my opinion, you've got a bunch of people that are saying, give me accountability. There's high accountability, but we're low on trust. We won't give it. That's micromanagement. That's an environment of micromanagement. And, if you're trying to plot a path to autonomy, this is all my theory now, by the way. So just to state that out loud.
That's a book there.
Yeah, maybe. My theory is that if you're trying to plot a path to autonomy, if you sort of go round through, you have to flirt with a little bit of anarchy. Yeah. So the curve goes that way, then you're a trust is lost person. I give you trust to do a job, and you're going to have to break it. I'll have to lose it in you for you to stop having it. If you want to go that way, and that means you're going to flirt with a little bit of anarchy. Yeah. Now, how much of it you flirt with is a scale, and I've definitely flirted with that. Or if you go the other route that way, then you go through the micromanagement route and say, well, I'll trust you when you've earned it. So if you go that way, you're a trust is earned person. It's probably quite clear which route I prefer. Purely because I think once you get to that space, things work and you start going. I think the jump from micromanagement to autonomy is a lot bigger than from anarchy to autonomy. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So there you go. There's my thesis.
That's a book on that. That's definitely a book. And also it is so interesting because you talked about energy before as well. Yeah. Bringing energy into an organization environment, predict performance. It's important to bring positive energy. And if you want people to bring positive energy to work, you need to trust them and give them autonomy in principle, because that becomes that unique place to stay that nobody else can copy. And there you have your unique hospitality experience beside a good product.
And it's space. You just reminded me of a conversation. I think it's okay. I won't name any names again, but I was having a chat with another business I'm helping, and the operator in there, someone I perceive to be quite low on trust is, and he's a brilliant guy, really nice guy, fantastic to be around, cares about the staff in his own way, but he wakes up every morning thinking that the staff are going to come in and steal from the till. So we have to. His job is to make sure that doesn't happen, and then we're worried about hospitality after that. So I'm trying to explain how I'm very different, and I'm here to help now. And actually, we have to try and find let's talk about that. Let's have that debate. And I kind of I felt like I was getting him on side. I was like, it's like football. I don't know if you're into football, like, you don't know how good a player is if you're going to constantly mark them all the time. Like, you got to find out. You give them a bit of space and see if they've got any skills, and see if they can do something, right? So if you're always man marking someone, if you're always on them all the time, like, you're never really going to know how good they are, potentially, in certain situations, right? And he said, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so we'll give them some space, and then we can see who hangs himself. And I was like, damn it. I was like, not quite what I was getting at, but it was a really nice expression of how different our philosophies are. I was like, well, actually, I kind of want to give them space to see how good they might be. You're going to give them space. Yeah, we'll give them some space, and then we'll see who fucks up, basically. Like, well, no. So, yeah, I think energy, space, like, you can't, my kind of one-liner on that is, like, you see it all the time. We had it in Honest, I'm sure, in iterations of manuals I've written that said something like, take pride. We all say, you got to take pride when you work here.
Yeah, take care.
Which now, I'm in my later years, a more belligerent self would say to an employee who asked that of me, I'd say, okay, fuck yourself. Give me a reason to take pride. It's not a reasonable thing to ask of someone on their first day. The right response to that question, that directive is, well, I'll give me a week and I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Let me work in your restaurant for a week. And if I see microwaves and frozen food and whatever, right, and I have to do 6 doubles in a row, and there's no kind of support for me in any way, shape or form. And no one, when I arrived my first day, no one knew I was coming, and they chucked me I'll have this apron, if all those things happen to me in my first couple of weeks, then no, sorry, man, I'm not going to take pride, like, it's not a reasonable thing to ask. And, I can't make you laugh. I've got to tell you a joke, like, I can't tell you to laugh. I've got to tell you a joke. So, I think there's not enough responsibility on what we do as leaders, as operators, to curate environment. And then if you think you're bulletproof on that, then and only then can you start saying that person was wrong for the job, or they're not the right person, or this generation just doesn't want to work. Like, if you've gone through that process first and challenged yourself and looked in the mirror first, then I think you can say that.
That's super interesting, because I'm coming back to what we started again, the conversation. The environment predicts everything, and you are the leader, are more responsible for the environment than anything else.
Totally. Well, it's the general managers. The real ego hit for me as someone with a reasonably large ego, I would say. I certainly like talking and, I like being that founder in the room and trying to engage people. I don't mind admitting. But what you really realise is it's the general managers. They, you can have the best Christmas party in the world, and then if your general manager talks to you like shit and, gives you a horrible rota and whatever it is, right? You're not going, oh, it's okay, we had a really good party last week, or I love that cycle to work scheme that we've got, it's okay. You don't. No, it's like, and again, I'm not saying anything earth-shattering here, right?
No.
It's all about your general managers. And if it's all about your general managers, then what environment are you creating for them is probably, as the CEO or the MD or the ops director or the founder, that's the question you've really got to ask yourself, because they will have more impact on the waiter's life than me, Phil, the founder of Honest Burgers, will ever have on any of the guys working in the restaurants today.
Yes, it's really about the energy they bring in and how they conduct and do it themselves in their roles. And then that's your responsibility, that they are in the best place to do the best they can do.
And I just, we've talked about a few things already, like self-determination theory, which is intrinsic motivation. How do you allow mastery with your general managers? How do you make sure that they feel like they're learning and they're being developed? That's what people really want. They don't need fancy perks and benefits, really. The long list that no one ever actually uses.
That's quite interesting. Many people ask me, so why did you stay 12 years at McDonald's? So it's exactly because incredible. I was growing and developing and becoming a better human being.
They
in
are
principle.
The best at that. And as much as people like to talk to McDonald's feel like burgers, I'm like, and I've got so much respect for so much of what McDonald's do, for the things about this industry that I've interested in, the space I've taken, people ops, my God, you cannot fault McDonald's and the amount of people that have come through that system. We mentioned Thomas Kelly, our chairman now, CEO, just moved into chairman role. A product of that system.
Yeah,
and it's an expression of time and intent.
Yeah,
and that is what people really want. Will you spend time and money on my development, not just for skills that will help the business, but for me? And I think in hospitality. Sorry, I know I'm ranting a little bit.
No.
I think in hospitality, we have a really interesting opportunity to embrace the fact that we are a stepping stone for some people.
Yeah.
And that's just fine. Some people are passing through and you can try and grab hold of them, which we do. We try and grab hold of them and turn them into managers. Or you can say, we're going to be the best stepping stone for that human being.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that someone will come to me and say, you know what, I want to be an architect. And there's this really great conference that's coming up in a couple of weeks' time. A, can I have the time off? And B, the flights are really expensive. We've got the flights for you. I would do that for someone because I think that's going to make them a happier employee, which I think is good for me.
We'll come back to the mastery bit. The mastery bit then becomes your competitive advantage. Like you said, you're going to have the best GM training in the industry.
Absolutely right.
Then it's a craft thing, and you can't copy that. And going back to the only thing I know is McDonald's. That was probably one of the best GM programs at that time.
It's incredible, yeah. I mean, I'm being a bit self-indulgent because one of the things I'm doing outside of Honest is working with Watershed Management Development. Stephen Waters, who I did his courses a long time ago, and then we used it Honest for a while before I decided to bring it internally, which I regret. And now I've written a couple of programs with him, one for shift managers, one for multi-site. He does this incredible, it's like this heritage course, like Good to Great is called. And there's not a great operator or running an MD in hospitality now that hasn't been on it, I swear. And we've trying to curate these courses now for people to come on and go through all the ranks, through for all the layers. But mostly, when I run these sessions, and they're public sessions, so you have a couple from Dishu, and we've got loads of Hawksmoor, Blacklock had sent a load of people, Box Park has started to send a load of people. We've got some really Super 8, we've got some really cool brands sending their people. But I'm really comfortable within 5 minutes that actually, if I teach them anything, if they learn anything, I give them any kind of insight whatsoever, that's actually a bonus to the first and most important impact, which is they feel like they've been invested in. When they look around the room and they've been sent to a place with other operators, particularly from restaurants they respect and admire and have probably eaten in. Yeah. You see this shoulders broaden and their chest pump out, and they're just like, God, my business really and has invested in me. Then it's our job that hopefully they learn something. But actually, I'm almost like, it doesn't really matter, because the best thing you can do is say to someone, we really care about your development. Yeah. Go to this space. Again, little cultural nudges that tell you what we think is important in this business. And
also, if you send them on a shared course, you also show that, we are confident enough about our business that we will send you out in the real world and meet others, and they will learn something from it.
Yeah, you thought of it that way. Spot on.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting angle there.
Well, we ask people all the time, what did it was always nice to finish with a kind of last word to you, what did you learn from today? And usually it's something articulated along the lines of, I just liked being here, which is I like as a facilitator who's trying to impart something, you're a bit like, well, yeah, you had to take that on the chin a little bit, but actually it's like, no, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Then you've done the job. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's about showing someone you're going to invest in them, time and money.
A couple more questions, then me wrapping up. We could continue for hours. We're very passionate about what we're talking about, both of us. But what is the one book you give 9 out of 10 times? If you give away a book?
On the question list, and I don't read a lot. I would say I'm going to give you 2. Mm-hmm. One academic. Read. It's a bit of a sort of behavioral science Bible, really. It's the for thinking fast and slow.
Yeah, a great book. Yeah.
I would say if you're interested in some of the stuff we've been talking about in the last hour, and you like the idea of behavioral science and the kind of how you...
Daniel Kahneman,
Yeah. I thought he died last year, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
But, thinking fast and slow, system 1, system 2.
Yeah.
it's a really great.
Yeah.
I think it's a really great exploration into understanding that environment shapes behavior.
Yeah.
So I'd recommend that to anyone. My favorite book. I'm not a social I don't read for a hobby. But I loved. Have you ever read Yes Man by Danny Wallace?
Yeah.
If you want to understand my personality, read Yes Man. It will give you a sense of kind of what I care about and how I go about my life, I think.
Great. We'll put it in the show notes.
Don't watch the film. It's rubbish. Jim Carrey. The film didn't do it justice at all. Read the book.
I was thinking about that as you were saying it.
Don't watch the film. Read the book first and then watch the film, but make sure you read the book.
Is there one question you wished I asked you, which I didn't? And what would the question be, and what is the answer?
I forgot about that one. I knew you were going to ask me that. One question you wish I'd asked. No, I think you covered it all. Is that really annoying? Do you want a question?
No, I don't need to. So
give me 5 more and
I have a different question to you then.
Go on.
So what you learned today?
What did I learn today? I probably am more. You probably helped me articulate a few things in my head around certainly Breadstall and how I want to do. Funny enough, after this, I'm going next to get this team together. There's 4 or 5 of them key players that are going to be the first GMs and our first dough master. And, there's 5 of them. And I'm going to spend 2 hours with them after this.
Yeah.
And you've actually helped me shape what I'm going. I really want to galvanize them around the project. I want to be really clear. Like this is the first sprint is a 3-year sprint to try and get to 10 restaurants. We want to try and hit a valuation of this. This is how we think we're going to do it. And then I'm going to get them to tell me what the rules of the game are. So I'm going to ask them to tell me what and this will go in someone's employee, like when they get their contract and they'll get this thing that we're going to write together today. But I want no more than 10, I hope, but let's see. How are you going to stand out in this business? How does someone stand out in this business?
Is the number important?
No. I think if it's loads, it'll be hard for someone to read and remember.
Yeah.
But it's certainly, you've probably reinvigorated me even more now that it will not be a list of values or one-word behaviors. It will be, what does someone need to do to really stand out in this business? And then us as a team are going to live by it.
And you talked about 10 sites a couple of times. Is 10 sites important as well?
10 sites? No, it's purely, I don't think that's the ceiling, by the way. No. It might not be where we get to. We might decide that's the wrong thing to do, but we think we've raised enough money to do that with a fair wind. So I think it's the first checkpoint for us to say at 10, I think there's a, for investors and for we can.
It's the summit.
We want to incentivize this team that I'm talking about as well, so they can share in some of that value. And I think that's probably the right time frame to keep someone really motivated towards an end goal. But I'm going to be saying to these guys that have all taken, in most of their cases, have stepped down to come and join in. I'm going to say, I need some. You're signing up for 3 years. Yeah, I need you guys in it for 3 years, and how are we going to work together, and what does good look like, basically. But they're going to tell me, hopefully.
Great. Well, we'll definitely check in on that. I think there's a podcast conversation following up on the philosophy, the behavioral science, what worked, what didn't work, and what is your learnings within these 3 years. Thank you so much, Phil, for coming on and sharing your journey and all your insights. And we're looking forward to follow you.
Great. Thanks for having me.